I've got TV on the brain when I use expressions like "we'll be right back," as if we were cutting to commercials or something like that. Maybe down the line, okay, this TV discourse thing is going to catch on, and we're going to have so many YouTube viewers, as if that we have to budget for those little annoying commercials, right? The 5-second kind that you can click through. But let's finish up. Let's engage some questions from Aaron. Aaron's got questions. Let's start with the TV shows we've been exploring this whole session. All in the Family. We're looking at the All in the Family PDF from Seppenwall and Sites. Do you think Archie Bunker as a character would be accepted on television today? Yes, we have many of him on dramas, right? This sort of anti-hero figure, right? That's politically incorrect. In fact, politically incorrect figures, if I'm not mistaken, are quite popular in one way or another in America currently. With modern audiences seeming to be so easily defended at times. Right? So the PC principle. Or, ties right into question 2. Do you think there is currently a character or characters on television comparable to Archie Bunker? In all honesty, and this is a text you all have talked about previously, Michael Scott comes to mind in some ways. And if you go back to that first season of The Office, we've talked about how first seasons can be a feeling out process. And even though The Office's first season is funnier than Parks and Rec's first season, both of them have weird tones to them that don't really settle in until season 2. Okay. And Michael Scott's character is trying to emulate the original British variation, okay, in season 1, trying to be closer to that very harsh, interpretation by the show's original creator, Ricky Gervais, who's a very, un-PC, tell it like it is comedian, and, they softened it a little bit, but even look at, I think it's episode 2 or 3, where they put like even the sticky notes on their heads and stuff. Michael Scott, he's very scornful. He's got problems. Dennis Franz, I don't know if any of you have watched NYPD Blue back in the day, but Dennis Franz's character was quite the, racist, bigot, prejudicial police officer who had tons of problems and just endless tragedy. And over the course of the series, he becomes somewhat of a redemptive figure and very apologetic, right? So he evolves, and there is, to a much lesser extent, Archie Bunker evolves in that show. But not in the ways that the Dennis Franz character does on Stephen Milch and David Bochco's cop drama, NYC cop drama, NYPD Blue. We can't get sidetracked on that show, but there's a lot to say there. Don Draper this is a period drama reflecting the 60s, so Mad Men's intent is to look at the past through a critical lens and create this air of, to revisit the past and sort of simultaneously glamorize it and highlight the problematized behaviors, the toxic masculinity, the patriarchy, and so on. But Don Draper, in a more of a dramatic role, really so many of the men in that show, they're very Archie Bunker-esque, but it's not funny, right? We're not laughing. We're kind of horrified, right, by their behaviors, setting bad examples for people, and maybe even setting bad examples for the creator showrunners, who's starting to, stories have leaked out that he, was maybe getting a little too into his own mindset and behaving like one of the boys in his writer's room. So. Do you think the dichotomy of the humor of the show, okay, talking about M.A.S.H, against the tragedy made the show seem funnier than it would have if the subject of war was a constant backdrop, if that hadn't been treated so seriously? In terms of M.A.S.H, in terms of the dichotomy, I think that the dichotomy is essential to its formulaic success. While you go back and look at it now, I mean, it's very, it's practically a safe show to watch in some ways. But that ability to toggle between comedy in early seasons and almost drama in later seasons, and the sort of devices that they use to tell stories on that show were very and highly innovative for its time. And so we're talking about genre theory, how genre operates. And so anytime we're talking about genre, it's ultimately boils down to a tension between imitation of form and innovation of form, right? There's certain parts you need to emulate, you need to repeat, and the audience not only recognizes it, but they crave it, they want it. And then there are the parts you're trying to bring that are brand new. This is the part, the pieces we're excited by. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did this. This was a TV first. That I've never seen that on a TV show before. So that combination. So this show M.A.S.H was great at bucking the trend, right, and being experimental, kind of rewarded as a result. Yeah, in fact, its ultimate reward was the final episode. The series finale was the most widely watched single piece of TV programming in the history of television, and it was a record it continued to hold for up until 2010, until the Super Bowl became such a widely consumed sport that for several years running, the Super Bowl has sort of toppled the Nielsen ratings. Although I wouldn't be surprised if we see a dip in the next couple of weeks. You just wait and see. That's not even a bold prediction. Let's just see. I wonder. We'll find out. Who's really protesting, the players or the audiences? That's a fascinating cultural question. In light of today's climate concerning gender issues, topical alert, what is your opinion about the author's statement? Okay, statement, quote, "The series doesn't deserve to be called misogynistic, as the nurses were treated fairly," end quote. This is a baited question. Oh, she's trying to bait me, Aaron. Thank you for prefacing, right? Just at least let me know. Genuinely interested in your take on this topic. Now, so regard to that excerpt, I had to go back and read their short essay in full, make sure that I was speaking to the context of their words, all right? And so there was a lot of praise for the TV series M.A.S.H. I mean, it wouldn't be included in the best TV of all time if there wasn't a lot of praise going around. But let me read. So it's like the essay is, 3.5 pages of praise, and then a full half to 1 page of straight up critique. All right. And so I do think Sepinwall and sites are critiquing it pretty sternly here at the end. And allow me to read that excerpt. Okay. So middle at page 83. The only aspect of M.A.S.H that hasn't aged well is its portrait of women. It was openly, if benignly, sexist in its early years, though not as brutally as Altman's film, Robert Altman, the film that came out before the TV series, and then they give an example from that film. But there were never any major recurring female characters except for Margaret, who spent the series' early years as a cartoonish foil besotted with Larry Linville's Craven, Major Frank Burns. She would mature over time and become Hawkeye's ally, and occasionally more than that, though their accord took away most of the humor associated with a character known as Hot Lips. For the most part, the other nurses were depicted as a Greek chorus line for the men in the foreground, as emblems of domesticity and motherly, big sisterly nurturing during office or off hours, and sexual prizes for Hawkeye. Okay, Alan Alda, main character. They were so neglected that whenever they appeared, the show worked their names into the dialogue so that we could tell them apart. The series doesn't deserve to be called misogynistic, as the nurses were treated with affection. It was homosocial, meaning it was concerned with male values in a male world. There's truth to the perception that in later years it became one of the most aggressively feminist series on network television, thanks mainly to Alda's influence in the real world behind the scenes. His name became synonymous with sensitive new age man. But Hawkeye's nonstop sexual remarks about women undercut this perception. In terms of representation, M.A.S.H never quite put its money where its feminist mouth was. End quote. Okay, that's a pretty stern critique, right? So what they're doing is they're holding up a mirror to the show, and you're saying, you can be judged on your innovation, you can be judged on your creativity, on your groundbreaking iconoclasm, but let's also look backward with that cultural critique, right, lens, and say, and you still didn't do enough, right, and you still didn't do X. But I think, this is like so many, and you're right, this is absolutely topical for today because we're having these conversations about the past actions, about the past actions of men, about the past actions of men toward women, particularly in workplace settings, right, or in this case, in entertainment. And when you, and so there's a bit of a double bind, right? It's like you can't go back and change the past, but what can we do to make sure in our recognition of some positives of the past, we aren't also bringing the negatives with us moving forward, all right? So that's usually what's missing in so many of these discussions, is that we're not just slowing down and calming down enough to methodically and objectively look at and assess things and then make, confident and informed and inclusive decisions that help us chart inclusive and thoughtful, right, progress toward the future, right? Toward the future, whether it's programming, whether it's or whether it's fictional or real world, right, or both. Excellent. Okay, running out of time here. Skip ahead. Can you? Oof. No. Goodness. Can you talk away? Can you talk about some of the, quote, other ways viewers and non-viewers engage with complex television, end quote, or reception practices, looking at page 9. Okay, in other words, these, in terms of building upon and engaging these reception practices, Mattel is encouraging us, and if I had more time, I would read the full excerpt here. Mattel's encouraging us to be not only open to his suggestions, theorizations about how to tackle and assess and analyze TV, he's inviting readers, scholars, students, critics to add to his conversations, to even modify and evolve what he has to say about it so that it advances in even more profitable ways. So this is a bit of, this is that open dialogue part on the scholar's part, right? On the scholar's position to say, here's my work, here's how it lends to the field, here's how it extends the field, and please use it, and as is appropriate, critique it when and if necessary, and by all means add to it. And let's evolve what we mean by poetics, right? Concerning television and televisual theorizations and method. So he's inviting us. There's, so much more. Meta-reflexiveness, meta-reflexive stuff. You think about shows. Seinfeld was about, Jerry's own process and inspires Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry David simultaneously has episodes and seasons. He's reflecting on Seinfeld and vice versa, right? Text referring to other texts. So much more, but we are out of time, folks, and I look forward to talking to you all more online.